Hello, I'm Jane Badrock and welcome to the launch of my debut novel, Sinister Sisterhood. And at the moment I'm in paradise. I really am. I'm in this wonderful nature reserve called Paradise Wildlife Park. And you can be in paradise too. It's up or down the A10 depending on where you live, and a turning off it, and it's signposted all the way. It's a wonderful day out for all the family. My children used to come here when they were younger and they always absolutely loved it. And there's something even more special about the place at the moment. They have 2 tigers, and guess what? They're sisters, Alina and Siberia. And I think you can see one of them just behind me now. They'll be housed in their wonderful new enclosure soon, and I can't wait to come back and see it when it's all finished. So let me tell you a little bit about Sinister Sisterhood. And this is not a book for children. It's available from today from Amazon and all good bookstores, and I'm donating half of all my royalties to animal welfare charities. You can probably guess a little bit about it from the title. A very kind reviewer said it reminded her of Charlie's Angels. But angels, they are not, even though one of them is called that in the beginning. You might wonder what was the inspiration behind it. It was 2015 and I was already writing a book about wicked women. They were up to blackmail and murder and all sorts of mischief. But it was all for the money. Then I read and heard about the terrible shooting of Cecil the Lion. And like any decent person, I was totally shocked. And I wanted to do something to help raise a bit of awareness about this. And I thought, what could I do? I wanted to do something to turn my anger into something positive. So I gave my women a real cause. Obviously, in real life, you can't go around murdering people, however evil they are. But my women can. So they became animal activists. Well, sort of. In the main, you have to read the book really to understand it properly. So what's it all about? Elle, the woman formerly known as Angel, is jilted. She seeks sanctuary in India with her tiger-run auntie, where she learns all about animal exploitation. She returns home, sworn to seek vengeance on trophy hunters and illegal poachers. To do that, she needs help, so she begins to build a team of Sinister Sisters. I didn't want to upset people, but I did want to raise awareness, because many people are completely unaware of the horrible and disgusting things that are done to many animals, and it's usually just for the sake of human vanity. It's so unnecessary and so cruel. In order to get my point across without horrifying and upsetting people, I wrote it in a humorous way. I have been described as Victoria Wood with a chainsaw, and I really like that description, but I don't know whether I live up to it. I hope I do. One of the most surprising things I learned about trophy hunting is that it's often used as an excuse for conservation. People say that it raises so much money it helps in other areas. But the people who really know what goes on say that's not true. And the only way you should ever shoot animals is with a camera. You might wonder where the characters came from. Mostly they came out of my very peculiar mind. But I would be lying if I didn't admit that my Auntie Pat in the book bears a very striking resemblance to my Auntie Pat in real life. She doesn't live on a tiger reserve or near one, but her life does stop at 5 p.m. every evening for a G&T. Is there a sequel, I hear you ask? I certainly started drafting something, but unfortunately coronavirus stopped it in its tracks. So I'm afraid we're all going to have to wait and see what happens next. I'm going to read a little extract in a minute, but first I'd like to say something about the publishers, Bad Press Inc. We're looking for niche books, and mine was never going to be mainstream. The first thing I noticed about them was the name. It's practically the same as mine. It was a marriage made in heaven. It was bound to work, so I submitted. So thanks Bad Press Inc. for taking me on. Now I'd like to read a little extract from my book, Sinister Sisterhood. But first, I have to put on my glasses. Angel finally set out on an adventure of her own. The actual location was pretty much kept secret since it was a tiger reserve, but her aunt's directions were clear. After a short flight from Delhi, she got out of the little Fokker 50 and walked down the steps into the searing heat of India. She had been terrified throughout the entire flight and was even more terrified now. What on earth have I done, she thought. It was about to get a lot worse. She was in the middle of nowhere. But then she heard a voice almost obliterated by the noise of the jet. Elle? Is that you, Elle? No one had called Angel that in years. She turned round and there, walking towards her at a brisk pace, was a strange woman in huge, brightly coloured sunglasses, a pith helmet, khaki jacket and shorts, below which were a pair of securely tied heavy walking shoes. Auntie Pat? Angel asked in horror. Now she was nearly at the point where either one end or the other goes. Clenching and swallowing as her aunt approached, she looked behind her as if she might just run back onto the plane. Or take a sneak at the tigers. But the steps had been removed and therefore she had no choice. Come here, child, said Pat, managing a friendly, decent sort of hug. The wheels are in that car park over there. Hurry, we can't be late. Late for what? Angel wondered. This thought soon changed to, are we even going to make it? When she saw her aunt's old jalopy parked, as far as she could tell, in an open field. Actually, it was an old Jeep to be precise, and despite its appearance it was well maintained. Chop, chop, Pat said. Get your case. Angel picked up her case and lugged it all the way to the Jeep. She was even more horrified when she got close to it. There was a chicken roosting in the back, and all sorts of junk in the front. Old bottles, cans, newspapers, bits of hose. Pat bundled some of it up and threw it in the back, setting the chicken off into a mad clucking. Can't disturb the poor old thing, said Auntie Pat. Hetty's very choosy where she lays these days. The journey to Auntie Pat's villa wasn't much better. She only ever used the accelerator when they were going uphill. Downhill, to save on petrol, was done entirely by gravity. And if it was a particularly steep hill, it was accompanied by a loud whee with both her hands in the air. Had Angel dared take her eyes off the road ahead, she would have seen that she was in the most gloriously beautiful countryside. As it was, she was trying very hard not to puke. When Auntie Pat pulled up outside the villa, the outside looked about as promising as the back of the Jeep. There was junk everywhere, an old sink here, a rusting bike there, and chickens and geese running all over the place. Quick! Auntie Pat hustled Angel indoors. She ran straight to the fridge, lobbing her helmet onto the hat rack as she went. Took out a saucer with half a lemon resting in some water and cut 2 slices. Then she poured out 2 large gins and topped them with a smidgen of tonic. Finally, throwing some ice and the lemon in, she looked at the clock. It was 30 seconds to 5. She handed a glass to Angel and said, Just in time, bottoms up. Angel looked at the glass in distaste. She had never drunk gin before, but there was nowhere else for her to go. She steeled herself, took a sip, and luckily she liked it. Now, dear, sit down and tell me your problem. Angel was very tired from her journey and had kept her tears in for quite long enough. The gin relaxed her eyes and she began to weep. Auntie Pat was horrified. Good grief, girl! There are more important things to cry over than men who cheat. Auntie Pat took a large album, a gallery, of grinning trophy hunters posing with dead tigers, lions, elephants and other poor creatures. This is important, she lectured. Stopping these devils! Angel sobbed a little less. We shan't fall out over this, said Auntie Pat. I can see you're tired. Go to bed and we'll talk over some fresh eggs. Scrambled probably after our journey today. Angel looked around the villa. Unlike the outside, it was spotless and very tastefully decorated with a large veranda at the back, looking out onto a beautiful garden. Angel's room was clean and brightly decorated with a large, comfortable 4-poster bed draped with mosquito nets. There was a small shower room attached, so she quickly got washed and then fell into the most comfortable mattress she had ever slept on. She was out like a light and didn't even wait when Auntie Pat came in, searching her bags for the gin and cigarettes. The next morning, Angel awoke to a much nicer place. She breathed in the hot air and began to unpack. After a while, there was a smart rapping on the door. Breakfast in 10, said Auntie Pat, and exactly 10 minutes later, she sat opposite her at the breakfast table, feeling very refreshed and not at all tearful. Good morning, Auntie Pat, Angel smiled. Good grief, child, you're far too big to be calling me Auntie. Pat will be fine, and good morning to you, Elle. Angel pondered this for a second and then, very bravely, ventured, Everybody calls me Angel now. Well, that is the silliest name I ever heard, Elle, Pat snorted. Was that your insipid mother or your wet father's fault? It was David, Angel whispered, the faintest moistening of tears around her eyes. Even more reason, Pat declared. From now on you will be known by your proper name. Now then, Elle, we have a great deal of work to do. Elle sat up surprised and a bit curious. We've got to find your backbone, Elle. You have the same blood as me, so it's got to be in there somewhere. I will teach you what's important in life. You must have standards. The world is a wonderful and terrible place, and we need more decency and honesty in it. But, Elle began. No buts, Pat said firmly. We will go and see Dr. Gupta as soon as he can fit us in. He will write you a certificate, the berry or some such, and will demand that you take at least 6 months off work. You will send it back to your office, and you will not go home until we've made a proper woman of you. Elle sat open-mouthed. And please put your tonsils away. Elle snapped her mouth shut. Eat, came the command, so Elle, by now starving, happily obliged. Something in Elle, perhaps the wayward vertebrae, told her that this would be a very good experience for her, and she was proved to be right. Pat was a good teacher, and Elle was toughened up well. Her first lesson took place at the Tiger Reserve itself, where Pat was a regular volunteer. This was an eye-opener for Elle. She hadn't actually thought about where tigers get their food from, and seeing them close up tearing into large chunks of what used to be pretty little gazelles made her gag a little. But far worse was seeing for herself the remnants of a tigress carcass, skinned and boned alongside the dehydrated remains of her 3 little cubs. All this so that men can get it up and cure toothache, Pat declared, and Elle felt her resolve and her backbone harden. I'd like to give the other authors who've already been published a little mention. The first book I'd like to talk about is The Axe and Grindstone by Paul Fitzwilliams. Mark Adams is a loser who, having just lost his job, gets another one, the job of his life, but it's his life that's at stake. He has to run a pub that exists between 2 worlds. This one, well, not paradise, clearly, but somewhere else, and a really nasty place the other side of the cellar door. It's a fabulously funny romp through real and not so real time and space. It's perfect pub fiction. We think he may have invented a new genre here. The next book I'd like to talk about is this one, Clear by Ray Lee. It's not an easy book. If I'm honest, it reminds me a little bit of the scene in Clockwork Orange where Alex has his eyes pinned back and all these shocking scenes are flashed in front of him. But the book's not painful to read, it just takes a bit of effort. And when you make the effort, it's very worthwhile. The third book is While Nobody Is Watching by Michelle Dunn. You might have already seen her trailer for this. It's an excellent thriller. We see the world through the eyes of Lindsay Ryan. We're introduced to troubled children, drug addicts, and the horrors of conflict overseas. It's full of wonderful, colourful, authentic characters, including a fabulous dog called Frank. It's a great and sometimes disturbing read. So now it's time to say goodbye, and thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed listening to it, and more importantly seeing the wonderful animals that we're all trying to help here. And as I said, if you do buy my book, I very much look forward to hearing what you think about it. Now, the books are available, as I said, from Amazon, but all details will be on the Bad Press Inc. website. And I would like to say thanks again to Paradise Wildlife Park for making this film possible.